Kayla's in the chat, just so you guys know. Kayla Simon.
All right, here we go. Hello, hello. Hey, Brandon. Hey, Jen. What's up?
Hello.
I am unmuted. I successfully unmuted before I replied to you.
Hey, that is a good start.
I've worked for tech for like 15 years. I know how to unmute a PC.
I'm checking on my other machine to see what folks can see externally, but YouTube's just showing me a giant black screen, so I'm gonna hope things are going okay. So if either of you happen to have the webcast brought up on a separate machine and you can see chat, let me know if folks can hear us.
It looks fine for me.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, I can't tell if you can hear or not because I have it muted, but I don't see any comments saying that the audio doesn't work.
Chat. Okay. Yep. Okay. Got confirmation. Audio's good. All right. Well, with that, hello everybody, and welcome to today's what is this? February 2024.
It's the almost Valentine's Day edition.
Right? You're not wrong. That's tomorrow. I didn't even think about that when scheduling this. A new year is upon us. We're doing another webcast. Exciting topic as always. You know, we love bringing you the fun stuff that we do. If you have been in the Dev or Canary channel as of late, hopefully you've heard a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. But before we jump in on that topic, quick round of intros. I'm Jason Howard, program manager here on the Windows Insider team. Brandon, you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Brandon. I'm on the Windows Insider program team. Sorry, I'm doing the chat stuff.
How about you,
Let me
Jen?
know when it's time to get my spiel that I gave in the chat, too.
All right. Jen?
Hi, I'm Jen Gentleman, the only gentleman at Microsoft. And I do... It's never going to get old, Jason, or at least not to me, maybe to you.
So goofy.
I do feedback stuff, lots of feedback stuff at Windows. Yeah, that's good enough.
Awesome. Brandon, before we jump over to the guest, your spiel, if you would like to.
My spiel is this. We are not going to be announcing today any new builds, so no new flights across any of our channels. So don't expect that.
It is Patch Tuesday.
What's that?
It is Patch Tuesday.
We're not flighting new builds to Canary Dev Beta, so I don't want to get into the weeds. And then the other thing is we are not going to be talking about future Windows plans. So we announced that Windows version 24H, Windows 11 version 24H2 is this year's annual feature update. That's it. That was in last week's flight. So any other questions about what we're doing with Windows after that, we're not answering that. So that's my spiel, and I'm excited for today's guest. So
excellent. Well, should I bring him on? Should I delay this any further? No, let's just bring him on.
Do it.
Let's do this. All right. And with that, the magic begins to happen. What's up, y'all? How is it going? As the folks see on the screen, we're going to be talking about Sudo today. Super excited. It was announced in one of the recent Windows Insider blog posts. We'll drop a link to that here in the chat here in a moment. But for those who may not have caught that, we were fortunate enough to have 3 of the folks who were involved with this work effort to come educate, share, demo, talk, answer questions, all the fun stuff that we like to do on these broadcasts as we bring you information and insights about the features and things that we're working on. So for the folks that are tuned in and for the guests that we have today, I'll just kind of go left to right for folks as they see them. Clint, you are in the top left, so if you'd like to do a quick intro. By the way, before Clint goes, I want to say something. This is Clint's, third webcast? Fourth webcast?
Let's go with third, maybe fourth. I don't know. It's one of those, like, when I get invited, I'm like, why do I not just go? Because you are all fantastic people, and then I get to harass Jen before and ask her a bunch of pointed questions, and she can't go anywhere.
That's the secret. That's why you come to these. I'm trapped.
Oh my goodness. Well, I will say, from a guest perspective, Clint now holds the crown for most guest appearances on the Windows Insider webcast. So.
And if you invite me again, I will evidently wear my the unicorn crown that I gave my niece. So I will print another one. So
I saw that. I saw you post that. It was super cute.
Yes, my wife jokes though. My 3D printer prints toys and masks, and she doesn't actually see the countless amounts of other things it prints. But it shows my screen as frozen.
Nope, I got you fixed.
Okay, never mind. So a little bit about myself is I'm Clint. I run Power Toys and a team inside of Windows, and we do cool stuff basically, and we help out developers and power users. So yeah, and I'm gonna point it over to Jordy.
Hey everyone, this is actually my first one of these, so that's very exciting for me. My name is Jordy Adumi, and I'm a product manager. I work on Clint's team, so I also get to work on awesome developer experiences. A fun fact about me is I'm a huge basketball fan, and I open with that because at some point, if I end up sharing my screen in my terminal, you'll actually see some Lakers colors and Lakers things. So I'm a big basketball fan, and I grew up in LA, so big Lakers fan. So if there's any Lakers fans in the chat, I'm here for you. And I guess I could pass it over now to Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm an engineer on the Windows terminal and the Windows command line experience. So yeah, I've been doing command line stuff here, 8 years now. So yeah, I'm excited to be here. This is my first time talking to like a lot of people. I don't know if I'm legally allowed to talk to people as an engineer, but I'm going to give it my best.
Oh my goodness.
Mistakes were made inviting.
I can already tell this is going to be a fun broadcast, which is it's what these are supposed to be about, right? Half of it's education, the other half is a chance to like take a break from, just the craziness of doing the work that brings all the features externally. So hopefully this is a nice little reprise from all the hard work you've been putting in, a chance to come and talk about it and goof off for half hour, 45 minutes. So that being said, thank you for the intros. Really super glad to have y'all here. But without further ado, I know y'all have some content to cover. So from that perspective, I'll kind of turn the reins over to you. Let me know how you want to start, and I'll make sure folks can see whatever it is you'd like to share.
Sounds good. I can go and do a quick intro to the topic, and then Clint, Mike, and I will just chat and figure how we want to drive it. And depending on what people want to see, we can just show you what we got. But we're here today to talk about a new feature called Sudo for Windows. And so if you're familiar with Sudo on other operating systems, this is the Windows equivalent of that that we've been working on and that we're really excited to share with you. And so there's different ways that you can configure Sudo. The too long didn't read is it's a way to elevate commands from the command line. So from an unelevated console, you can sudo foo and you can elevate foo, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so that's new in this release that we had, and we're going to show you, I think, shortly how to enable it, the different configurations. We'll go through some examples, and maybe Mike will help us understand some of the under the hood, how the things are working, and we can kind of explore that. So we're really excited about this new feature, and we also want to share some other community features that we've seen that are really awesome. So I did want to really quickly shout out gsudo. So if people are familiar with that, this behaves similarly. It's our version of Sudo for Windows, but that's also a really fun community feature. So if people have seen that, that's an open source GitHub repository. And the last thing I'll say before I be quiet for a little bit is our feature is also being open source, in the process of being open source, and you can find that at github/microsoft/sudo. So you can see some of the issues, the feature requests, things like that. So if you want to follow along over the coming months, that's probably the best place to do so.
Awesome.
Any other additions?
I'm going to grab that link to GitHub and drop it in the chat. So for folks that are tuned in, whether you're watching this live or in the replay, just double check the chat. It'll be here in just a moment.
Cool. Well, if no one else wants to add anything, I would be happy to try to share my screen. We can make sure things are showing up properly. And I'm going to do the silly thing here. We're going to do a live demo. So everyone has to be patient with me and make sure the screen's sharing right. And I'm going to have windows popping up, and I'm going to drag them around, and it's going to be a beautiful mess. So let me try to start sharing my screen, and I'm going to pause. We're going to make sure that y'all are seeing the right things. Okay. I'm sharing.
No pressure.
Okay.
Live.
Do we see the settings app? That's what we should be seeing.
Yes.
Do we see that? We do see that.
Okay, so I can see it coming through in Teams now.
Okay.
Yes. There we go.
Awesome. Okay. So as I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about Sudo for Windows, and it's similar to Sudo on other operating systems that you'd find, Unix-derived operating systems, but it's fundamentally different. Windows is different under the hood. So we're going to talk about kind of how it works here. And again, Mike's going to show us some stuff. I brought in some slides. Mike, if you like them, talk over them. If you don't, I'll stop sharing my screen. We won't show the slides, whatever you want. So the first thing I wanted to do is just show people how you can enable Sudo. And so within the for developers settings, system settings, you will see this little toggle here. And so you can just go ahead and click on. I need to drag a window over to the view here, but then you'll get a nice pop-up, and it'll tell you things about Sudo. There are some security risks. Those are documented well in the Learn More docs. Those are documented well in the blogs. And we're going to even chat about it a little bit today. We won't go too deep into the weeds, but there's also stuff about that on the GitHub repo. So we'll chat a bit more about that. But for now, I do want to enable this feature, so I'll enable it yes. The other thing I want to point out from the settings app specifically is if you drop down, you will see another drop-down menu. And so you can configure how Sudo runs applications. And there are 3 different ways in which you can configure Sudo. And we'll double click into those different configurations. We'll do examples for each one. And again, we'll kind of dive into some of the nitty gritty with Mike. So I'm going to keep it in the default. The default is in a new window. And we can actually go into terminal. And now everyone should be seeing my terminal. Is that thumbs up? We're good? Okay. Yes.
Looks good.
Okay. Awesome.
Are you using Posh? Oh my Posh.
I'm using Oh My Posh, yes. And then here what you're
so
seeing.
So good. Sorry.
Thank you so much.
Do you want to talk about after you do the demo? Do you want to nerd out about your setup?
Yes, I'll do a quick segue, and then maybe we can double click on it later. But
Jordy is very proud of this, everyone.
I'm super proud of this, everyone. This is Oh My Posh, and I'm, again, a huge Lakers fan. I told you there was going to be something here. I had to do a shout out to the Lakers and basketball in general. And you'll notice this first segment. I don't know how well the highlighting shows up on the screen share, but that's an NBA segment. And I actually built that one and PR'd it into the Oh My Posh repo, which is open source. And the maintainer is awesome. So check it out if you want your terminal to look like this. It's really cool. But anyways, we're here for Sudo, not Oh My Posh. We can talk about that another time. So now what we've enabled Sudo, we've turned it on, and we've configured it in a new window mode. And so the first thing that I want to do is kind of work on an example. And so we're going to be working on a program that I made. It's called Make Sandwich. For those of you who know, then you know. There's fun. It's a little bit of fun that we're having. And so the first thing is I've made this program. We're going to try to run Make Sandwich. We'll give it a little bit of time because I wrote the program, and as a product manager, it's not very performant, but it'll do the job for teaching us. I think the first time I run it, for some reason, it takes some time. There we go. All right, so you just saw this program needs to be run as administrator, and the reason for that is because I wrote it so that you can only run it elevated. So before this, the way that I would go about running Make Sandwich elevated is I would right-click on the start menu, and I would launch terminal admin, and I would rerun the command. But now what I can do is I can just prepend the word sudo, so similar to what you'd see in other operating systems, and I can type in make sandwich. So let's do that, and let's see what happens in this configuration. I should also call out that I'm going to be sharing the UAC prompts. So I've turned off secure desktop just for this demo purposes so we can see the UACs, but I'll have to drag them over again. So I think you should be able to see the UAC prompt as well. Here you'll see that make sandwich wants to elevate. That's my program. I'll click yes, and let's see what happens. It's in a new window. I got to drag open that new window. But here you'll see little sandwich icons. There they are. They're so cute, aren't they? And once that is terminated, once it finishes, the new window will basically drop. And so what you saw there is I was able to run this program, Make Sandwich, elevated, and I was able to basically launch a new window. And we can talk a little bit, Mike, if you're down, to talk a little bit about what's happening, why it's launching in a new window, other than the fact that's the name of the configuration, and sort of how that works. So I've pulled these slides, and again, you can tell me to get rid of the slides, you can talk over the slides, but maybe share a little bit of what's happening under the hood.
No, yeah, slides are great. Yeah, so, for background, normally when you launch command line applications in Windows, they kind of share the console with whatever application spawned it. So like if you're running CMD or you're running PowerShell and then you launch, Vim or SSH or whatever, they all kind of share the same console window, right? That's normally how applications work. But then when you try to run things elevated, and in the past and what we do in the new window mode, what happens is you get a second elevated console. And that's really the problem that we're trying to solve here is like, if you are working in an environment where you need to run some things as admin, but not everything as admin, then all of a sudden, like people want to keep around two different console windows all the time, one that's running as admin and one that's not. And then you're typing in commands in different ones and you're juggling them back and forth. And like, oh, maybe you're running this thing that maybe you shouldn't run in an admin command prompt in your admin one accidentally. And like, there's just all sorts of annoyances here. That's the whole idea of we're trying to solve here with sudo. So when we do the new window mode, this default one, we're kind of just doing the old run as admin thing, right? We're just spawning a second console window, and that is hosting your application. This is obviously not the interesting scenario, Jordy. Jordy, show us the interesting one.
I will show us the interesting scenario. Really quick, just to double click on this. These are two separate windows. They have two separate instances of the console driver, more or less.
Yeah.
Hand waving.
These are engineering diagrams. These are things I made, like in PowerPoint. Like these are.
We love engineering diagrams.
I didn't make them in Paint, at least. I made them in PowerPoint, which is actually somehow worse.
Oh, so you're better than me because I make all my drawings in Paint.
Most of the time it's just photos of my whiteboard.
Cool. So you were just chatting through, we were talking about the new window configuration, and you mentioned that this is maybe not the more interesting configuration. And this doesn't really resemble the flow of like sudo on other operating systems. So that's where the other two configurations come into play. And there's some differences between the two, and we'll double click on these as well. But we can just go one by one. So I'll start with input disabled. So now I've changed the configuration just from the drop-down menu from in a new window to with input disabled. And I'm going to go back to my terminal, and I'm going to run make sandwich without it just to make sure, yes, it still needs to be elevated. That makes sense. And then if I run sudo make sandwich, let's see what happens this time. Okay, so this time I get a UAC, and you'll see sudo here in the UAC. I'll click yes, and there we go. I see a sandwich, and it looks a lot cuter because of the fonts and the way that I've enabled stuff in terminal. So you'll see that sandwich is a lot cuter. And I'm zooming in. And the program, what it does is it literally just prints out sandwiches for like 15 seconds or some amount of time. I can't quite remember. So hopefully you all could see that. But the big difference here is that we ran this elevated and we saw the output in the same window. So we didn't have to launch a new window, which is pretty interesting. So Mike, if you want to walk us through kind of how that works.
Yeah, this is where we start getting into the actually interesting scenario, right? The whole idea of sudo is that you're running your thing that requires the admin privileges in the same console. But how do we do that? What we end up doing is we end up spawning a second instance of sudo elevated. That one then communicates with the first instance of sudo. We do some RPC, move some handles around, and then we tell that second elevated sudo basically, hey, this console window that I am running in, you should run in that instead of your own console window. And then sudo takes the elevated one, takes that console handle and gives it to the target application. So in this case, the second sudo tells make sandwich, hey, you can just run in this first console window. And then presto, it just works. It all connects up to the same console. So you get the actually, Unixy experience of sudo right here on Windows.
That is awesome. Okay, so the biggest difference for me is, right, like the first one launched in a new window, and this one is like inline in the same context. It's right where I've left off essentially. But we talked about two different configurations that kind of do this, right? So this one here, just to double click, this is with input disabled. And so what does that sort of mean? Like, what's the input disabled part? Like, why is it named that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's the slide.
That's the one we want. Yeah. Okay.
So there are some things that you should be aware of, when you're running sudo. Basically, now you have this admin thing that is running in an unelevated window. And on Windows, anyone can just shoot keystrokes at any other window you want. So if you are running something that requires admin privileges in an unelevated window, anyone else can just shoot keystrokes at that console window and drive it. That's obviously not great. Be aware of this if you're turning sudo on. But if you're the kind of person who's interested in sudo, you know what you're doing. You've got your antivirus set up. You're not installing weird stuff off of downloads.com, but input disabled mode is a great way of mitigating a lot of the risks of running sudo because there is no input pipe. We close that off before we launch the target thing. So the input is actually not connected to the same console window. So malicious whereas.exe can't send keystrokes to your elevated thing when it's running in input disabled mode.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I do have an example that I want to go through really quickly. So I don't know but this behavior will be new for you, Mike. I haven't showed you this. This is part of the program that I made. And again, this is a PM. This is, you know how?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I saw it.
Okay, sweet. He read the code. It passed. So I'm going to show it. So I added this optional parameter order. I'm not sure how big it shows up in the screen share. So hopefully y'all can see this. This optional parameter is going to allow each of us to give one ingredient that we want to be part of the sandwich. So the way that works is like the way I would expect it to work. I'm not going to click enter just yet. I would enter, and then there'd be basically input saying, hey, like give me the ingredients. But with input disabled, I wouldn't be able to do that, right? So I'm just going to do this as an example, and I realize I should probably elevate this. I think we all know that making a sandwich requires elevation at this point. So let me run this elevated. Again, we're in input disabled mode. And the behavior is going to be a little bit different. So I get the UAC, of course, saying that I do want to do this thing. And here, look, it said enter ingredients separated by commas. I swear this isn't a program bug. And then it just says, here's your sandwich. So basically what's happening is that it's not letting me drive any input, right? Like you said, the input pipe, and correct my terminology too, I'm trying my best. The input pipe itself is closed, meaning that I can't interact with the program that I've just elevated, which for like us, it's lunchtime, at least it is close to me. Like we want to make a nice sandwich with many ingredients, which we should be able to do shortly. But in order to do that, to actually interact with something that we've elevated, we have to go to the third configuration, which is inline. And inline is, I'll go back to the slides really quickly. So this null, this is what we're passing into the elevated program. That's the input that we're saying in the input disabled mode. It's like that. But in the inline mode, which we're going to show right now, you can see that everything's attached. So let me go in one more time, input disabled, inline, go back here, and now we all get to make a sandwich order. So I'm gonna need some help from the other folks on the call. Again, if it doesn't work, blame my coding skills, but let's see if it does. So now we're in inline mode. I'll run sudo make sandwich with the parameter order. I'm gonna drag this over. I get the UAC, of course. I click yes. Okay, so separated by commas, ingredients. So we can go, Mike, I'll go with you first. Do you have a specific thing you like to put on a sandwich?
Peppers.
Peppers, okay. Peppers, so some input I'm putting in. Clint dropped, he really must not like sandwiches.
Wow.
Anybody else have any ingredients they want to throw on the sandwich? Cheese, okay. Cheese makes a lot of sense.
I want some lettuce. I would love
lettuce. Okay.
Caramelized onions. Okay. I'm just making myself hungry.
By making me spell live, I don't like that. Caramelized onions. Pretend that's spelled correctly, everybody. We're gonna go with yes.
Close enough.
Is it caramel? Is it with an E? Should I just fix it?
Just go for it.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep it. Fine. We're gonna have weirdly spelled onions on our sandwich.
Hey, this is how you know it's a live demo, and this is really actually happening in real time.
Yeah. I actually looked how to spell all the ingredients before, but no one's said caramelized onions before, so that's fine.
They're missing out.
And we're gonna go with a single tomato. How about that? Is it like that? Okay, whatever. I realize I can't spell ever since there's like autocorrect and stuff on my phone and on like Word and stuff, but okay. So now we have, this is a sort of contrived example, but the point I'm trying to make is we have an elevated program. We know it needs to be run elevated and there's some input. So now let's see if we can have this delicious sandwich. And now look, here's your peppers, cheese. I mean, it is a very contrived example, I will be honest, but you can see basically the point being that I was able to actually interact through the input pipe that is still connected. in this
I'm
third
really disappointed
configuration
that you
mode.
didn't make a joke about like Gordon Ramsay and elevating the sandwich.
Oh,
It was right there.
It was right there.
I tried. I really tried. That's a good one though.
I know. You're welcome.
Yeah, well, so that's the third configuration option. And again, I think Mike's done a really good job as he's eating his sandwich that we just made. Mike's done a good job of sort of explaining those last two configuration options. So I think that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to demo out in live demo, and nothing broke, and the program actually worked. So I'm gonna give myself a little pat on the back really quickly, and I can stop the screen share for a bit. I haven't been able to keep up with the chat, so I'm not sure if there's any interesting topics we want to dive into from there.
Mostly folks seem excited. Disappointment, there's no prosciutto in the sandwich. People talking about having used Sudo on other platforms. I think like one of the reasons why this work is so cool is, right, it's helping people who move over to Windows, and like I've seen the memes go viral so many times of like people, opening the command line in Windows and trying to use commands that they're used to, and then they just don't work and they struggle, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That was definitely one of the biggest reasons that we were like tackling this work. We got a lot of feedback from people directly in customer interviews. We did a lot of like research with some other like partners, external partners, just to try to understand what are the things that don't feel so natural. And this was one of the highest items. And so we were really excited about it for sure. I did see a comment about the icon. So the icon that you see in this build is not going to be there forever. So the icon that you've seen in the blog posts and around the webs, that is the proper icon. That is the next icon, the icon that we are settled on. So if you like that icon better, that's good, because that's the one we have.
If you like the old one better, thank you, but we're not going to ship the programmer art. So
everything changes, right? Everything always changes.
Yeah.
Are there any known issues with screen readers for the unelevated window?
There shouldn't be. It's a normal terminal window. It's going to work the same as your terminal usually does. So now you don't have to have an admin one. So if there were issues with screen readers and admin windows, hey, look, now you don't have that problem.
Somebody asked how this ties in with endpoint privilege management in Intune, or if this has any logic for that. Putting you on the spot.
I would not say I'm familiar with that enough to answer that.
I would say there's no logic for that at this point. So again, check out the GitHub repo and file some issues and let us know things that could be helpful. Like, we're very attentive to you all, and we want to make the best things possible. So let us know what could make things better, and we will definitely look into it. I will say there is a group policy support as well, though. So in terms of, if you want to disable this entirely, you can do that. If you want to disable particular configurations that are riskier, you can absolutely do that. So you do have control, like granular control over it in an enterprise setting for that.
So you mentioned providing feedback. So this is the point where I'm going to interject and ask you the question. If folks find things that they would like adjustments to, new features, if they find a bug, what is the preferred way for providing feedback on this functionality?
Put it on our GitHub.
Please.
Yep.
Please. Yeah. We're very active in monitoring that. We will be looking through things, responding to feature requests, aggregating feature requests that are similar, doing the whole normal triage situation, and that'll be the easiest way for us to get to your feedback as quickly as possible.
And you remind sorry, Jen. Can you remind everyone what the URL for that GitHub is?
It is github.com/Microsoft/sudo.
Sorry,
Jen. I think we have it somewhere in the chat.
I'm putting it back in chat right now.
I was just going to say that if you do end up filing feedback in the feedback hub because you need traces or whatever, like, we'll see it that way too. But yeah, for this particular feature, GitHub is preferred.
Yes. We're the same people who brought you the terminal. and we have a lot of muscle memory, and we know how to triage GitHub. Like, that's just what's most comfortable. And plus, it's great for having actual discussions and really drilling in on what the root cause of a problem might be. So, yeah, I love GitHub. It's great.
Microsoft went and bought it just for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my goodness. I'm taking a quick look over chat. I think we've covered the questions that popped in.
Does that mean it's time to nerd over the terminal setup?
I mean, let me say this. For folks that are tuned in, if you do have other questions related to Sudo, please add them in the chat. We'll make sure and tackle them, appropriately as we cover this. But we do have a little bit of spare time, so if y'all want to talk about your setup, even though I threw this in chat earlier, I still can't believe the Lakers somehow magically have a winning record. But a little off topic for this conversation. But
ow, that stings. We're not even good.
The Lakers do pickleball, right?
Oh, that was it for me, folks. I'm leaving now. I'm clearly not welcome. I actually am curious, Mike. I'm sure you also have a really good Oh My Posh terminal setup. It's got to have stuff in it, right? You're looking as if maybe not.
Well, no. No, I don't. But I also use CMD.
Oh, okay.
CMD is my preferred shell, and I have a pretty nice CMD prompt, but it's not like it updates every time I run a command because it's CMD. It's a little less up to date.
It's less PowerShell.
The diplomatic word. Yeah, I mean, yeah, PowerShell is like a very modern shell. It's great. Don't get me wrong. Somebody on the team has to be the CMD person. So
speaking of being the CMD person, Mike, Medi214 asked, does Sudo support CMD?
Yeah. It supports it great. It might support it better than PowerShell.
We love all our shells equally on this team.
Yes.
Sudo should work on many different shells. It should be shell agnostic, essentially. Yeah. So that's great. So if you have a different shell that's not PowerShell or CMD, still give it a shot, and it should work for your flows as well, which is awesome. I think we also got a question about what language Sudo was written in.
Sudo for Windows.
Sudo for Windows, correct.
We wrote it in Rust.
And Mike, was your first project in Rust, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Very cool.
But,
very cool.
Rust is really great. I definitely highly recommend it. If you want to write something native, which if you're going to write Sudo for Windows, it should be a native application. And Rust was great for that. Plus one fewer C++ project I need to maintain. So yeah, all for it. I would say in the course of the time it took to write Sudo, I feel pretty good knowing Rust. So the learning curve wasn't that sharp. It was a great experience. 10 out of 10.
That's awesome.
It's funny watching all the PowerShell versus CMD chat going back and forth. It's just like anything else when it comes to computing. Everybody kind of draws into their preferred camp, and then it's like, there's always the back and forth of what's better and why. And
I use both, depending on what I need to do. So.
Yeah. God forbid we bring up the fact that we had a discussion about text editors in the command line. Ugh. Oh no. Oh no. Claymore, leave.
Are you really trying to stir things up? You're really trying to get this pot going, aren't you?
I mean, this was actually a real thing that we did do.
This did happen. Yeah.
We did actually ask what is people's preferred text editor. I think it was Connor. Yeah. So we now have an opinion, and the opinion is we love you all.
Oh my goodness.
You can tell who is a parent on the call now. We have no favorites.
Oh, good.
I just see some people. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
No, you go.
I see some people mentioning that they had used sudo in WSL. Like, with the introduction of sudos for Windows, like, what are the implications for WSL?
So, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, WSL is still kind of its own environment within Windows, right? WSL is a bit like a VM. I don't totally remember the technical details, but the sudo that's on your distro in WSL is still going to just be the Linux sudo. And then sudo.exe, sudo for Windows, is going to be the sudo outside. Like they're not the same thing. They're not doing the same thing, right? The permissions on Linux are entirely different than security descriptors on Windows. So they both solve separate problems.
I believe this to be true, and Mike, you can correct me, but also from WSL, let's say you're in a workflow and you need to elevate something Windows specific, you can use sudo.exe to elevate the Windows specific thing from WSL. Because like you said, WSL is sort of its own box of goodness. So if you want to play outside of the box, which is Windows land, if you will, you can still use sudo for Windows to elevate in those contexts. I don't have a flow that I've ever needed to do that in WSL, but I've heard of other people and talking to customers. Some people have claimed that's something they'd like to do. So
yeah.
And one of the key things, Jordy and Mike and everyone, I apologize. I was having an internet issue, so I had to drop. And I'm betting you talked about this, but this is a great topic to hammer home: is muscle memory. Is
absolutely
we like one of our
I brought
teams,
that up for you.
Thank you, Jen. And we want to be sure, like, making sure that you are productive and that everyone is productive, regardless of where you are. It should flow seamlessly. And that's one of the things our team takes to heart and go, okay, if you're here and you transition over, are you going to be frustrated? And we want to reduce that frustration, and that, like, our team, like our Vicky on our team uses the term toil a lot. And we want to reduce that. We want to make everyone happy, quick, productive. So we use Power Toys occasionally to test out proof of concepts, to see, like, are they landing? Is the UX correct? How do we reduce it? And then we migrate that stuff over.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sudo is definitely something I've wanted to make for Windows since I got here. I spent 4 years in college pretty much exclusively using Linux machines because whatever, I was a college student and that's what they had, and it was great. And then come work here, and now I'm trying to install packages and use Chocolatey, but now I have to run everything as admin, and I didn't really understand all that stuff when I first got here. I didn't understand why it was all so hard to just do what I wanted to do compared to Linux. And now it's after 8 years of working on WSL and the terminal and sudo, like, starting to feel like what I wanted Windows to feel like when I first got here. So
yeah, I can absolutely echo that. As a part-time student actively doing computer science stuff, it's really nice when things just kind of work the way that you'd want them to work, more or less, and don't have to context switch so much. And the context switch can be, like, pretty burdensome. So I know a lot of people in my class are also very excited to have things that are similar, so when they're on their Windows machine, they're able to do things the same way, more or less.
And
are the people in your class Windows insiders?
I will get back to you on that. I'm not sure.
I think
at least one, but I can't say blanket statement.
I think Jordy should be a great advocate for talking about Windows Insider in his classes.
All right.
I think a good question for the community also is everyone on the chat and just holistically is, what things as a developer, as a power user, do you want in Windows? So, like, that is our team. I asked it on X/the Twitters recently, like, what things can we do? What things is causing you that toil? We are actively listening. I cannot count how many times we've done one-on-one and along with focus group chats. So we want to listen. We want to hear and hear what you all are doing. So if you want to put it in chat, we'll happily talk about it as well. We have ideas. We just want to be sure that those ideas mimic and match what you all are wishing and hoping for.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love it in chat. It says WSL and WSA make my work so much easier. Like, there's not much better than when you get to see the hard work that you've put in come to real life, goes out to customers, and then you start getting feedback that it's solving the problems that you designed it to go and solve. Seeing the real world impact of the work that's being done, it's one of the best feelings there is. It's the reason why we do this stuff day in and day out.
Oh yeah. I know all of us that were helping do this workflow and other workflows, we were so excited and biting our fists as this was getting ready to roll out. We're like, is it this release? Is it the next release? Jason, tell us, please. And then after we harassed Jason a little bit too much, then we switched over to Brandon to go like, Brandon, is it in this release? And then we're super excited to be here today.
It's I say this every time we have a guest on, but I'll say it just because it's truly how I feel about it. Like, I really appreciate all the hard work that the teams around Microsoft are doing, and more importantly, like, I appreciate y'all making the time to come and hang out to educate folks about the work that you're doing, the impact that it has, taking in feedback, listening to, how users are using your product, whether there's things that they want to see different, changes, bugs, all that kind of fun stuff, because it's the reason that we still do these webcasts, right? Part of it's the educational side of things. The other part is to, connect with the community and get to listen to them directly. It's always fun making these engagements. And so, it's much appreciated y'all making the time, to carve some time out of your schedule to come and hang out, hopefully have a little fun along the way while simultaneously kind of tackling those two really priorities of what we're doing here, which is to drive awareness and education, and then to, connect and listen to feedback. So I'll just say, like, there's obviously a lot of good work here. It's out in the hands of insiders. As this continues to grow and get adopted, I'm no doubt you have more tricks and shenanigans up your sleeve. Hopefully we will have time along the way. Let me just say, I know the people that schedule these webcasts, wink, wink. So, as new things come along, we'd love to have you back to cover more, to answer more questions, to talk about what's new. Because this is definitely not, this thing's just getting started, right? This thing has a bright future ahead of it. And, we'd love to support you in any way we can in getting the word out and making folks aware of really all the hard work that you're doing.
Yeah. Thank
Absolutely.
you. Yeah.
I'll be here to talk about the Windows command line as much as you want me to. I'll talk about it all day.
We know people. And I think that's a great question also for the community. Like, what other things do you want? There's a bunch of cool stuff that is coming up. We'd love to nerd out. So this is also the same team. Terminal team is the team that helped bring in some of the compression work that got brought in also, and that's continually getting added. You didn't talk about that at all.
That's so cool.
So that's Sorry,
we
Mike?
didn't talk about the path thing either. We should talk about the path thing. In this next, I think in this canary build, if you run winget install whatever, we're just gonna reload the path variable in your shell in CMD so that you don't have to like close out of CMD and relaunch it to get image magic back on your path. No, it'll just be there. I think there's a couple other tiny little CMD changes that are coming for like letting you know when something isn't found. And Clint, I know you've been working on a PowerShell module for that too. Or a PowerToys PowerShell module for that. So yeah, there's some really exciting stuff. Jen, I see in chat, we did have that somewhere. I don't know if it was in the release notes, but it is in one of our many blog posts that are floating around.
Yes.
So yeah, it's like we're here to make developers' lives better. Now you can just sudo install foo, and foo's there for you, and it will just work the way you want. So
yeah,
really excited to talk about all this stuff.
So for those who have context around what Mike just talked about, the environment path reload, it is the canonical example for that is you do like a winget install git.git. that requires, and then you'd expect it to be able to type git clone blah. For me, it would be, PowerToys. But to do that, you need to refresh your environment. So this is a way for us to continue that, reducing the toil, all these little things. This is a paper cut that we're aware of, and we're actively working toward fixing it. So.
Yeah. I've had a handful of use cases with the refresh, and I actually have found myself Control-Shift-P in terminal and then restarting connection to like reboot the environment, even though I didn't need to anymore. And each time I realized that I didn't have to anymore, it was like a big smile on my face because like, oh, this will be a thing of the past for me. Or like close terminal, reopen it, another way to do it. So that's really exciting. I also want to say, based on what you were talking about earlier, Jason, that like really excited to be here. This is, from my perspective, one of the most exciting parts of the job, to be able to showcase the work that we do, to be able to talk to all the customers and stuff, and to hear all the use cases. I think is really interesting because I hold things such a specific way, and I talk to two people and I'm like, wow, you hold that entirely differently. Like we can make this so much better because I didn't know people could, hold this feature that way or use this thing to do this workflow. And so it is awesome to get the opportunity to talk to people and get the feedback from you all and hear your ideas and thoughts on like what we can do to continue to make Windows the best.
Absolutely. That said, I think Mike has to jet. I think he's got some family.
I have a baby who's very awake, so.
Yep, I understand.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Folks, I think this is probably a good stopping point. It's been a whole lot of fun. Hopefully folks that have tuned in have learned a thing or two. If you're checking this out on the video on demand after the fact, swing by, there obviously the links are there. If you have comments or feedback about Sudo, the link to the Git repo is in the chat. So put that stuff there. If you do submit through the feedback hub, put it in the developer section and we'll get it one way or the other. But other than that, always, we'll be back with more of these along the way over the course of the year. Stay tuned to the Windows Insider newsletter because, of course, we send those out with cool tips and tricks. Brandon's blog post. You can stay in touch with all the builds we release at aka.ms/flighthub. But with that, I think that's a wrap. And we'll check for any additional questions we missed. We'll get out on X/Twitter and tackle those. But with that, until next time, thank you once again. Hope you all have a great rest of your day and enjoy the rest of February. We'll see you next time.
Bye.